guys, thanks for tuning in. It's Loza from the Baking Mad Gym Addict. In my last meal prep session, I did a collaboration with Joanna So, and a few of you requested that I also try recording a vegan meal prep session too. Now, I'm not vegan, but I did the best I could to come up with some healthy vegan recipes, which I hope you'll enjoy. Keep watching and let me know what you think. Okay, right, that's enough chit chat. Let's get going with food prepping some breakfast. I made a chocolate vegan buckwheat granola. Lots of people think buckwheat is a cereal grain, but it's actually the starchy seed of a fruit, which is part of the rhubarb family. I personally just use it to add an earthy, toasty flavour to my granola, so don't stress out if you can't find raw buckwheat, because you can totally substitute the raw buckwheat with good old regular oats instead. To make this granola recipe, I lined a big baking tray with some non-stick baking paper, and then I poured in 1 cup of raw buckwheat. Next, I poured in 3 cups of rolled oats and 1.5 cups of walnuts. If your walnuts are a bit too large for your liking, then feel free to gently crush them up with your bare hands. I quite fancied eating some big nuts, so I didn't crush them up too much. I then threw in 1.5 cups of flaked unsweetened coconut and grabbed my packet of organic cacao powder. Now, this will taste much more bitter than your regular chocolate cocoa powder, but I would totally recommend using this because it's super nutritious and it's chock full of antioxidants. Now, I learnt during this food prep that vegans don't like to eat honey, so to sweeten my vegan granola, I'm going to add in 1/4 cup of maple syrup. When adding your maple syrup, bear in mind that cacao has a bitter chocolatey flavour and not a sweet chocolatey flavour, so consider adding more maple syrup if you feel like you need to. I also add 1/2 cup of melted coconut oil and a few pinches of pink Himalayan sea salt and a drizzle of vanilla extract. Mix everything really well and then bake your granola in the oven at 180 degrees Celsius or 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 20 minutes. Remember to take your tray of granola out of the oven and stir it occasionally to get your granola evenly toasted. Oh my gosh! Baking the granola in your oven will totally make your house smell like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So delicious. After 20 minutes, let your granola cool down completely before storing it in the mason jar. This will keep fresh for up to 2 weeks if you store it in an airtight container, and it tastes really good on top of your smoothie bowl. For extra chocolatey goodness, I actually made my smoothie bowl with a scoop of natural chocolate Town Nutrition vegan protein powder. If you want to buy some vegan protein powder, check out where you can find it in the description box below. Okay, let's prep a snack. I'm going to make some roasted chickpeas to munch on this week. This is super easy to make. You'll need 2 cans of chickpeas. Each can here was only 80 cents, which is such a bargain. After rinsing my tinned chickpeas, I used some kitchen paper towels to blot out some of the excess moisture. Once that's done, I add in my choice of herbs and spices. I chose some spicy mingle seasoning, ground cumin seeds, pink Himalayan sea salt, some sesame seeds, and some dried oregano leaves. Once your chickpeas are fully seasoned and laid out on a single even layer on your tray, pop them in the oven at 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 30 to 40 minutes. Let them cool completely before storing them in an airtight container or a resealable bag. These are super tasty as a snack on their own or sprinkled on top of salads or soups. Speaking of soup, let me show you my kale and cashew soup recipe. If you have a high-speed performance blender, this recipe will take about 20 minutes to make. You will of course need to lay your hands on the 2 main ingredients, which is chopped up kale leaves without the stems and some cashew nuts. My cashew nuts are roasted and unsalted. You'll also need 2 small onions. If you prefer a subtle onion taste to your soup, consider giving your onions a gentle stir fry in a hot pan before putting the onions into your food processor or your high-speed blender. You'll also need 2 veggie stock cubes, 4 cups of water and 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. After pulsing the ingredients in my Vitamix blender, there was more room in my jug, and so I added a few more handfuls of kale leaves and about 300 grams of celery. This really helped to thicken up the soup and make it even more filling and nutritious. If you don't have a high-speed performance blender, consider making the soup in smaller batches because some blenders can find the kale leaves quite tough to deal with. After about 7 minutes of blending in the Vitamix blender, your soup will be nice and warm, so just season it with some salt and pepper, and then that's ready to be stored in some mason jars for you to eat during the week. I loved reheating this delicious soup to make it nice and warm, and I also like to add some texture to the soup by garnishing it with some kale leaves and sprinkling on some roasted chickpeas on top. Yummy-licious. I really liked adding the roasted chickpeas because it was kind of like a low-carb version of croutons. Alrighty, now I'm going to show you a vegan burger recipe. I rinsed 2 tins of red kidney beans. Again, these tins were only about 80 cents each, so super cheap. I flavoured my vegan burger with some Sophia spicy mingle seasoning and some curry powder. To add a nice, bright, fresh taste, I also added some fresh lime juice and some fresh coriander leaves. I think some Americans call coriander leaves cilantro. I throw the beans into my Vitamix blender with 3 3 tablespoons of oats, 1 tablespoon of curry powder, 1 tablespoon of the spicy seasoning from Mingle, and 1 bunch of coriander. And because chia seeds are one of the most nutritious foods on the planet and chock full of omega-3 fatty acids, I added in 2 tablespoons of chia seeds too. Disaster struck, however, when I turned on my blender. I'm an optimist and I thought, meh, I could manage pulsing and combining the ingredients in one go, but I actually had to reduce the quantity and pulse the burger mixture in smaller quantities to make it work. If I had my Vitamix tamper to push and flatten the ingredients against the blade, this would have worked, but sad story, I recently broke my tamper for my Vitamix, and so I have to wait until I next visit America before I can buy a new tamper. For those that follow me on Facebook, you'll know that I went on holiday in America about 2 years ago and bought a Vitamix blender just because it was so much cheaper to buy the Vitamix in America and take it back to Australia with me in my suitcase. The electrical power voltage in Australia is too high for the American Vitamix, and so I needed to buy this step-down transformer gadget to make sure my Vitamix didn't blow up in Australia when I turned it on. Anyway, buying the Vitamix tamper for this model is next to impossible in Australia, so I need to wait until I'm next in the US of A so I can buy a new one. Once you've pulsed up your ingredients, shape and press your mixture into burgers. I made 8 pieces of vegan burger patties in total. I sprayed my big frying pan with some olive oil on a medium heat and cooked each of my patties for around 10 minutes until they were all cooked through and golden. I flipped them about halfway to make sure they would cook evenly, and I kind of pressed them down a bit in my hot pan until they were about 2 centimeters thick. Once they were cooked, I just stored them in an airtight container in the fridge. You can heat them up or eat them cold. Instead of butter, I used the smushed up flesh of a nice ripe avocado and spread it onto a seeded bun. I also added some slices of tomato, some mango chutney, and some spinach leaves. I really recommend eating your vegan burger with a nice dollop of ketchup, mango chutney, or some sriracha sauce. Alrighty, speaking of salads, let me move on to my 4th recipe. This is an insanely awesome roasted pumpkin, walnut, and spinach salad. This was one of my favourite things to eat during the vegan food prep. I used a sexy looking butternut pumpkin which looks like this. To save time from peeling and dicing up the pumpkin, I just cheated and bought a packet of raw diced pumpkin. This packet contains about 700 grams. For this recipe, you'll also need 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. Spread your diced pumpkin in a single layer on your baking tray and then drizzle on the olive oil and maple syrup and then season well with salt and pepper. Mix everything well so that your pumpkin is evenly coated and place your tray in the oven at 220 degrees Celsius or 420 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes until your pumpkin is nice and golden. While your pumpkin is roasting in the oven, I grab 1.5 cups of walnuts. For this dish, I wanted some smaller nuts instead of some big nuts, and so I popped the nuts into a resealable bag and bashed them up with a mallet. Once I'd crushed up my walnuts, I added 3 tablespoons of sesame seeds because I really like the taste of sesame. Sesame seeds are low glycemic and provide a good source of calcium too. After the pumpkin had been in the oven for about 15 minutes, I mixed in my walnuts and sesame seeds like this. The tray then gets popped into the oven for a further 5 minutes or so until the seeds and walnuts are lightly toasted. I'm now going to make a really nice dressing to go along with my roasted pumpkin, walnut and spinach salad by mixing together 4 ingredients: olive oil, Dijon mustard, maple syrup and lemon juice. I combine all 4 ingredients into a little mason jar and shake up the dressing ingredients really hard until it looks like this. By now your pumpkin should be ready. I grab a big food box and load it up with alternate layers of spinach leaves and the pumpkin mixture. This recipe makes about 6 servings and is really delicious. When you're ready to eat it, just drizzle on some dressing. In my cupboards, I had a choice of red rice or black rice. Red is my favourite colour, so I chose red rice. This one is from Forbidden Foods and is 100% whole grain, organic and gluten-free. It takes about 20 minutes to boil and simmer the whole packet of rice. Once the red rice was cooked, I set it aside. I had a handful of dried shiitake mushrooms to get rid of in my cupboards, and I thought this would be the perfect way to add a deep, savoury Asian flavour to my rice. You can find dried shiitake mushrooms at your local Chinese supermarket, and they last for months if you store them in an airtight container. You can see here that I'm snapping off the stalks of the dried mushrooms and then chopping them up into smaller pieces. I always find it easier to snap off the stalks of the shiitake mushrooms while they're still dry. Because you buy these dried, you have to hydrate the mushrooms before you use them. To hydrate the mushrooms, I put the dried mushrooms in a bowl and pour in some hot water over the top. I pop a plate on top of the bowl and just leave the mushrooms to soak for about 20 minutes until they're all soft and hydrated like this. As well as the shiitake mushrooms, I'm also going to chop up some other veggies to add to my rice. I like adding as much colour to the rice just because it makes it look even more appetising. For a nice crunchy texture, I also added some toasted cashew nuts. To make some toasted cashew nuts, heat a large frying pan on a medium heat and throw in your cashew nuts for about 2 minutes until they release a really nice fragrant cashew smell. Once you've cooked your rice and prepped your shiitake mushrooms, veggies and cashew nuts, it's time to put on your MasterChef hat and start cooking. Add 1 tablespoon of coconut oil to the pan on a medium heat. Once that's melted, add 1 tablespoon of minced up garlic. Once the garlic is nice and fragrant, add your green peppers and onions and stir fry them for about 5 minutes before adding your cooked rice. Stir fry for a further 3 minutes or until the rice is heated through. I then added my shiitake mushrooms and salt and pepper. I also mixed in 3 tablespoons of mango chutney just to give a nice fruity flavour to your rice. I then threw in my toasted cashew nuts and a handful of chopped up coriander leaves. And that's your cashew mango rice done. Ta-da! So here are my vegan meals and snacks ready to eat for the week ahead. For snacks, I had some cherries and strawberries and some sweet corn on the cob. Instead of using butter on the sweet corn, I used some umeboshi paste which I bought from iherb.com. Umeboshi paste has a tart, tangy plum taste and it went really nicely with the sweet corn. I buy a lot of weird and wonderful things from iherb.com because they deliver worldwide. If you've never bought anything from iherb before, just check out the links below because I've got a discount code for first time users. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even miss eating meat when I had all this yummy vegan food ready to grab and go and eat. For this week, I just made a heap of different meals and picked and chose what I fancied eating during the week. It was really nice to combine a bit of everything together too. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel, you've hit the thumbs up button and you've left me a cheeky comment because that really motivates me and lets me know that you're there. Stalk me on Facebook and Instagram if you want to check out more of my day-to-day shenanigans and keep sending in your photos of any of the recipes that you try out from my channel. Use the hashtag BakingMadGymAddict so I can find them. By the way, if you're wondering where I got this sexy top from, I bought it from Joanna So's website. I've put a link in the description box below if you want to check out the 30% sale she's got going on at the moment. See you soon and good luck with your food prepping adventures. Bye!